pretty much what happened here is we have a person that said, I was quoted $6,500 by the roofer and they wouldn't go down on the price. They're basically charging me the maximum. They can charge me 15% according to the price of my roofing job, and my house already has straps. They are just missing one nail and some don't go straight down to the concrete. Even the inspector that came to my house to do the retrofitting said the job should be a couple thousands of dollars. The problem is now I'm going to have to decline the retrofitting. Now I'm left with a really good roof that is not properly attached to the house. Is there anything that I can do? So, a couple disclaimers. I don't have a lot of context here, so I am going to make a lot of assumptions. So just a couple of things I'd like to clarify that stand out to me right away. Number one, and I want to make this as unbiased as possible. So number one is a really good point is the homeowner is concerned about how the roof is attached to her walls. It's a roof structure, truss, and this is her walls. Now this connection here that I always talk about, I usually go this way, is how the walls are connected to the roof. Now, adding the straps reinforces that connection. It's called your roof to wall connection, and that has to do with two things. One, building code, and number two, insurance discounts. And I'll get into both of those. What I'm seeing is that the homeowner cares about that, which is awesome because we try to educate people on that. It's about saving money and it's about having a stronger home. The first thing that calls my attention, I have to jump on it right away, is the fact that somebody else gave them a price, the inspector. Now, I see this all the time and I will side with the roofer on this side or the contractor on this side. You just don't know. And I do see it happen, and I've seen it happen in my case and in other people's cases, where somebody will put it in the owner's head that a job should cost X, Y, Z. Who is the person? Do they have a license? Are they actively working in that area? And then also, one company's cost is not the same as another company's cost. Are they licensed and insured? Do they have workers' comp? Do they have W-2 employees? Do they have subcontractors? Do those subcontractors have insurance? There's so many factors. And then also every company's markup is going to be different or should be different because everybody has different operational costs. And that's probably getting too deep. However, the biggest thing is, and even recently, we have an architect that we do a lot of work for, and they put it in a client's head that a door should cost $20,000. Installed, permits, everything. The cost of that door alone, before permits, before engineering, before delivery, administration work, everything was like $18,000. So by the time all was said and done, I think we were in like the high 20s, low 30s, whatever it might have been. The point of this is that, if you have somebody who's not in the business, who doesn't know the cost of these products, they're just giving out general numbers and they don't know. I've seen home inspection reports when somebody buys a house, when we used to do general construction work, where, the home inspector lists out what they think the cost to repair the work is. They're not a general contractor, they're not an electrician, they're not a plumber. These are just general numbers. However, a homeowner will grab onto that number and say, no, this is what they said. And it does make things tough, and that is trying to be unbiased because it's just reality. Somebody who's not in the business has no idea what something costs. I couldn't tell you how much it costs to put in a new alternator because I'm not a mechanic. I might be able to give you a range, but I'll tell you it's not $20,000. So that's the first thing is, just understanding that when somebody gives you a range or somebody gives you an estimated cost, but they're not in the business, it's kind of hard to judge. Really the biggest thing, and that was a personal, I decided to take that one first. But for me, the first thing that stands out to me is they were quoted $6,500. Now I have no idea how big this house is. I have no idea how many straps are included within that proposal. So I'm just gonna go line by line. So in regards to the $6,500, it's really hard to understand, but it's really hard to understand without the context, but I will say this. Different houses are gonna have different costs for retrofitting straps. Now, typically your trusses, if this is your house and I'm coming up and over, your straps are going to be reinforced where the trusses sit on the tie beam. Now, if you have a gable end, which if I'm looking down this side of the house, I'm standing on the side of the house, I'll be able to see the two sides of the roof and I'll be able to see the flat side. That is called a gable end. So no straps are going on this side of the house. It's just where the trusses are sitting on the two ends. Now, this would be the cheaper option or more economical to where, we're only putting the straps on this side and this side. Now, if you have what's called a hip roof, whereas if you look on this side and it looks like a triangle, like a 3-dimensional triangle, to where the roof is not flat, or this wall above the roof, the wall above the tie beam, excuse me, is not flat, it's a triangle. Now you have trusses that are sitting on top of here. So that cost is gonna go up. It's gonna be more expensive, you're gonna have more straps, more labor. So, having the context is kind of tough. 6,500 does not sound unreasonable. It is very important that you understand what is included in those 6,500s, because that's where some contractors will get you with the gotcha, where, oh, that wasn't included, gotcha. So one thing, engineering. Another thing, permits. Another thing where I've seen other contractors take advantage is that they'll give you a price. And a basic thing to understand is when you're replacing these straps, you really only have 2 options. You either go top down when you're replacing the roof, you go bottom up. We basically cut down 12 to 18 inches of drywall, and then on your ceiling, we cut out 12 to 18 inches, and that gives us enough space to work. Now, the only time it makes sense to do it from the inside is if you're doing an interior renovation where you're tearing all your walls off. If not, you're basically gonna have the perimeter of your house wide open. You're gonna have a lot of repairs, and then what you also have to consider is not only do you have drywall repairs, but you have to do paint, etc. And it would be a dusty process, it's nasty. So the best time to do it is top down when we're actually working from your roof. Back to the topic. When you're replacing these straps, what some contractors will do, will give you a price to replace the straps, but what do they have to do in order to access the straps? They have to remove the wood that's on top of your roof deck in order to access and replace or repair the straps. So in this case, or in some cases, the contractors won't include the wood and will charge separately for it, which that is something that's easily avoidable. So I did a quick search, and one of the suggestions was getting an itemized quote. And an itemized quote doesn't really do anything for you, because if I say the straps are $16 or $65 in materials, you can fact check it, but what does that really do? The most important thing is the breakdown in regards to what is included. Then you can do your research and just make sure you're not missing anything and something is not out of the scope. Making sure that the wood is included in that price is going to be very important for you. Another thing they mentioned in the comments is that the contractor is charging them the maximum they possibly can, which is 15% according to the price of the roofing job. They could potentially charge you as much money as they wanted to, or ask you for as much money as they wanted to. They can say it's $100,000 if they wanted to, technically speaking. The 15% comes down to a loophole in having to do the work. And I've made a lot of videos about this in regards to should homeowners in Florida be allowed to use that loophole to try to avoid replacing straps. Now, the downside to that, as I've talked about before, is that insurance companies are taking on higher risk for insuring homes that don't have the straps. Homes that don't have the straps are more likely to have more damage during a storm. That makes it riskier. They have left Florida. A lot of companies don't want to come back to Florida. So there have been some things written into there have been some changes made in the legislature which have tried to make it more appealing for these insurance companies to come down, and they reward homeowners for securing their homes, aka bringing down the risk for the insurance companies, so they are more likely to come back into Florida and bring down our rates. So the 15% is a loophole, so homeowners don't have to replace the straps. Now, there's a lot of roofing contractors that do not know this. Previously, you had to be a licensed general contractor in order to do this work that we're talking about. That is no longer the case. Now, a roofer or somebody with a roofing license can actually do the work as well. But a lot of roofing companies don't know that, so they also charge more because they have to get either a qualifier to sign the permit, because they pretty much have to get a qualifier to sign the permit because they're not licensed to do that kind of work, which doesn't make sense. Another off-topic squirrel is I started off as a residential contractor. That was my first license, and I could technically build a house from the ground up, but I couldn't pull a permit for the driveway because it touched the public right of way, which you need a general contractor's license in order to pull a public works permit. So it was crazy. I can literally do everything in a house, but I couldn't pull a permit for the driveway. The big points is making sure that we're not judging the 6,500 without an itemized scope. Understanding, once again, you don't need itemized pricing, but an itemized scope. What is included, what is not, that needs to be clear, and you should be very strong as to what is not being included that the contractor is aware of, and make sure you have that in writing. That's where a lot of homeowners and a lot of contractors get into trouble is, oh, I didn't think about that. Oh, that was not included. Well, why wasn't that not in writing? That's something I talk about a lot, is we have very detailed contracts. Yeah, we sold a job. We have very detailed contracts, and some homeowners get scared by that, but my immediate reaction is, if you're going into a marriage and you don't know who's taking out the trash, who's cleaning the house, who's cooking, who's doing what, how do you think that relationship's gonna be? Whereas if you lay out all the details, this is what I'm responsible for, this is what you're responsible for, this is what I'm not doing, this is what you're not doing, that kind of sets you up on the right foot. Anyway, so once again, another big thing is that an inspector saying a couple thousand is not the same as a contractor giving you that same price. And I'm happy to give you an idea of what it would cost. If you want to call the office, I can give you a ballpark estimate in regards to what that should cost. However, 6,500, depending on the size of the property, depending on the amount of work that has to be done here, doesn't seem unnecessary. One of the biggest things I almost forgot, and I'm sorry, is in your case, you already have straps. However, you're missing one nail. It's usually you have two nails on one side. There's a requirement. You have two nails on one side, one nail on the other side of the strap when it comes up and over the rafter. Basically, you need one nail here, two nails on this side. Now, if you're missing one of those nails, you don't qualify, as you know, and it could be a problem in regards to insurance credits. However, for the roofer, it's still pretty much almost the same amount of work, which is, basically taking out 6 to 12 inches of wood so the guys have some working space across the whole perimeter of where the straps are going, and basically installing that one nail and then cutting the wood and putting that wood back in place. The only difference is they don't have to buy a strap, they don't have to secure the strap into the tie beam, bring it over, put your nails on both sides, and an anchor on the other side as well. So it should be a slight reduction, but I wouldn't expect like a 50% discount, or I would not discount the work 50% because of that. The majority of the work is just the labor and time it takes to cut the wood and then replace the wood and also delay the job and hold it up. So if this homeowner wanted us to come in and do the work, two things. One, I have no idea as to what stage we are on, as to what stage they are on in their project. Scenario one, the roof has not been removed. I would say, potentially get some other quotes, see if they can work it out with the contractor. If not, potentially look into canceling. However, do I think that it is justifiable to cancel a contract because of this? That's for another day. And that's really what separates a lot of companies. And it's very interesting how things have gotten on the roofing side. And I'm gonna go off topic again here, but it's stay with me on this one. The amount of calls that we get, or that we got in the past, where it's just like, hey, look at my house on a satellite, send me a price. This situation, 100%, I'm sorry, is a result of either that, they went with a company who did not do a thorough inspection. Now, can things be found after the fact? Yes, and I'll get into that in a second. But if you are getting a price for your roof and you are not letting contractors into your home to diagnose some of the conditions of your house, you're gonna run into this exact problem. How do you prevent it? Allowing a contractor in. Every inspection that we do in somebody's house, we try to get into the attic and we look at the straps. So this conversation would have taken place a long time ago. We also ask for the wind mitigation report because somebody can have straps. However, if they don't have all the nails, guess what? They're not getting the credit. Therefore, once again, this would have prevented this happening in the first place, excuse me. The only times where we can't do it or don't do it is if somebody doesn't let us in the house, or, like a flat roof or there's no attic access, something like that. We won't actually be able to get our heads or our bodies in there to see how the roof to wall connection is. But that is where homeowners can do a better job, is by actually letting the contractors in the house, going with a company. You have company A that's just like, oh, we'll send you a quote, no worries. Company B actually goes in the house, does a thorough inspection. Who do you think you're probably gonna run into less issues with down the line. That would be my 2 cents. I'm not sure what the homeowner meant here by the straps not appearing to run straight into the concrete. So it really depends. That there's a lot of things that could be present here. You know, the people do some funky work in Miami. Sometimes handyman do some crazy stuff. Potentially this house is wood framed, or potentially a portion of the house is wood framed. So I'm not 100% clear on there, so I don't know how to determine that. So the only problem with bringing in another contractor to actually do the work is now phase 2 is the roof is in progress. So now the original contractor would have to stop their work, which in my opinion, they should be paid for, because now they have to remobilize later for the job, which is a cost for the company. A lot of people don't consider that or think about that, but if I have to take my guys, load up my trucks, prepare to go to your house today, and then we have to stop and then reload the trucks, prepare the guys to bring them to another job, there's a cost to that. There's traffic, there's gas, there's loading materials, unloading materials, getting ready for the next job. You know, a lot of time goes into this thing that a lot of people don't realize. So do I think that first contractor should be entitled to some remobilization fee? I believe so. But if you got if contractor 1 did stop the work, put a tarp over the area just to keep you watertight or try to prevent water from coming into the house, company 2 comes in to do the work. If there's an issue later with the roof deck, with a leak, anything in that area, now you start getting into the finger pointing, who's responsible for what. Oh no, it was something that they did. Contractor 1 can say that their work can void the warranty. It really gets into a gray area. So my advice for the homeowner, ask the contractor in a nice way to meet you at the house, meet you on Zoom, have a conversation with you, and just come from a good place and just say, can you help me understand where these costs are coming from? Try not to be defensive, try not to be accusational, and just really try to understand what they're including, what's not included. Make sure everything is in writing. That is the number one advice I can give to anyone, is having things in writing, just so you can always reference back to it, and really just try to work it out with the contractor. If you signed a contract with somebody reasonable, either A, it is completely justifiable as to what the price is, or B, maybe they're willing to work with you a little bit. You know, see what you can do to sweeten the deal for the contractor. Offering a referral, a video testimonial, whatever it may be. You know, how can you help their business? Maybe that's something to explore. That would be my advice. And to see where that takes you. If you have any questions about this now long video, I'd love to jump on the phone and help you understand a little bit more. We'll see if we do this again. Thanks for tuning in.